You can't unring that bell with me, Max. I believe Urban Meyer should have been fired. I believe Ohio State itself gave us ample evidence and reasons to fire him and somehow came to the conclusion that they shouldn't or won't. But here's the sad truth, Max. I think he will recover. I think because a 900 winning percentage can get you past even your own conclusions, memory, long-term future, football will wash a lot of this away for Urban Meyer, at least for many. Not for me. The truth of the matter is, Max, on this, I don't choose to take a position on Zack Smith versus Courtney Smith. I don't know who to believe. I'm not a police officer. I'm not a prosecutor. I understand what's gone down in Powell, Ohio. I don't have to pass judgment on that particular part of Zack Smith's decade-long dirtbag behavior under Urban Meyer's leadership to indict his employer. Forgive me, Max. Give me just a little bit of runway here, but I want to run over this if I can. This is what Zack Smith did over a decade while working for Urban Meyer. A 2009 domestic violence incident, a 2013 DUI incident, a 2014 $600 strip club bill with high school coaches on a recruiting trip, not exactly a big baller. From 2014 to 2016, abuse of credit cards that was required to be addressed by the Ohio State administration. In 2015, another domestic violence incident. Then, late to practices, no-showed recruits, generally lied about showing up to see recruits and failed at his job that he was actually hired for. Then, from 2015 to 16, took pictures of his junk at work. And oh yeah, by the way, at the White House. I'm not done. Then he had an affair at work with the work secretary. It goes on. Then he ordered sex toys in 2016 to be delivered to the Woody Hayes Sports Complex there at Ohio State. Then in 2016, he went to rehab for ADHD drugs. Then he was charged with criminal trespass. Then he was delivered a domestic violence protection order. And only then in 2018 was he finally fired. And amidst all of that, Max, Urban Meyer misremembered, deleted text. Immediate concern was how do I erase texts over a year old. Said he had memory loss. What other euphemisms am I forgetting, Max, for how to say lie in other words?
It pays to be Earl Bruce's grandson.
At the end of all that, Max,
apparently,
Urban Meyer didn't have to judge Zack Smith solely on the incidences with his wife and the domestic violence incidences. Any manager who had an employee who was behaving like this for over a decade that retained him would not have their job today. But the fact that Urban Meyer has a 900 winning percentage and the school has a very, very good thesaurus and figures out how to use words like lie but never actually use the word lie is why Urban Meyer's around today. If he survived this, Max, I have to think he can recover in the long term when he gets back to winning.
I think that was very well presented, Will. I think that it demonstrates also the good old boys network. Now, one of the issues that Urban Meyer's going to have, and we talked about this yesterday, in terms of his personal relationships with people around him, people will see this as loyalty. Because that's what loyalty entails oftentimes in people's minds. Loyalty to the individual above principle. But to the rest of us, which is many millions more times the people in his inner circle, loyalty to an individual who doesn't deserve it, loyalty to that individual who is a danger to those around him, apparently, and behaves that way, over principle, like honesty or decency or civility or ethical behavior, or even appropriate workplace behavior, indicates the power of those interpersonal relationships and why they can be dangerous. This guy, why did he have such rope for Zack Smith, which, by the way, is not doing Zack Smith any favors either. It's enabling his bad behavior. And you should hope that that doesn't enable behavior. You don't want anyone to be enabled to do those things, obviously, even for the individual, even for the perpetrator. Obviously, it's bad if you have moral standards. But the fact that that was going on indicates those kind of relationships and that kind of network. The grandson of Earl Bruce, who was a mentor to, obviously, to Urban Meyer, but also the way Ohio State has seemed to close ranks. The way they've given 3 games, what's the smallest suspension we can get away with giving and still kind of come out of this just about okay. The whole thing seems rotten because it seems like, as I mentioned, an example of the dangers of a good old boy network.
Max, one of the things you and I have had the opportunity to do with each other over the past 2 years is talk about a lot of these unfortunate and controversial instances. And one of the things I know that I'm proud of, and I know because I've sat with you over these last 2 years that you have done as well, have tried to be very, very devoted to the concept of due process and follow the facts where they go. The problem with that, and what I see from Ohio State fans today, is you begin to miss the forest for the trees. And in this case, you're right. Anyone who makes the argument about due process or whether or not we can trust Courtney Smith versus Zack Smith, but what you're wrong on is the absolute smoke billowing out of the building at Ohio State of keeping this guy around for a decade. And here's what I truly don't get, Max. Why was Zack Smith so important? You see, you talk about loyalty, but Ohio State fans ought to wonder today, why was Zack Smith more important to Urban Meyer than the Ohio State program? Why was he more important than the long-term future of Ohio State University? Because by showing such devotion to Zack Smith, he not only sold out his principles, his values, or the chance to become a leader of men, or the fact that he has some kind of devotion, whether or not he ever did, to the truth, he sold out Ohio State. He put Ohio State in this position by keeping Zack Smith in his position for so long.
That's such a good point. Will, that's such a good point. And this is the great irony with these institutions that cover up. You are not protecting your program because once you sell out your ideals, the program ceases to be the thing worth protecting. You are damaging your program even if the truth never comes out. But if the truth does come out, which it usually seems to, you're doubly damaging it. It's the irony of this kind of let's close ranks and do the wrong thing here in the service of protecting ourselves. You are doing just the opposite.